The sound of helicopter blades cutting through the air made everyone at my sister's engagement party freeze. I watched their faces turn from mockery to shock as the sleek black aircraft descended onto the manicured lawn. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. My sister's perfect smile cracked. And my father, the man who'd called me a disappointment just minutes ago, went pale. "Nora," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible over the rotor noise. Is that for you?" I didn't answer. I just stood there, gripping the railing of my parents' sprawling Charleston terrace, watching as the helicopter touched down 50 yards away. The downdraft sent napkins and flower petals swirling through the air, ruining my sister Claire's meticulously planned decorations. Part of me felt guilty about that. But a larger part, the part that had just endured an hour of public humiliation, felt a surge of something I'd never felt before. Vindication. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story doesn't start with a helicopter. It starts 3 months earlier, in a tiny apartment in Boston, with a phone call that would change everything. My name is Nora Thompson. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my life, I've been invisible to my family. Not literally invisible, of course. They could see me. They just chose not to acknowledge what they saw. While my younger sister Claire excelled at everything, top of her class at Duke, engaged to a successful neurosurgeon, working at a prestigious consulting firm, I took a different path. I became a social worker specializing in trauma recovery for domestic violence survivors. The work was brutal. Emotionally exhausting. Financially unrewarding. And absolutely necessary. I loved it with every fiber of my being. My family, however, saw it as a colossal waste of my potential. "You had a full scholarship to law school," my mother would remind me at every family gathering, her voice dripping with disappointment. "You could have been making 6 figures by now. Instead, you're living paycheck to paycheck, dealing with other people's problems." Other people's problems. As if the women I helped weren't real. As if their trauma didn't matter. As if choosing to help them made me less valuable as a human being. 3 months before Claire's engagement party, I was sitting in my cramped apartment, really more of a studio with delusions of grandeur, eating ramen for the 4th night in a row. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Nora, darling," she began, and I immediately tensed. My mother only called me darling when she wanted something or was about to deliver bad news. "I have some wonderful news. Claire is engaged." "That's great, Mom," I said, genuinely happy for my sister despite our complicated relationship. "Congratulations to her. The engagement party is in 3 months. June 15th. You'll come, of course." It wasn't really a question. "I'll try. Work has been pretty intense lately, Nora." My mother's voice hardened. "This is your sister's engagement. You will be there. And please, for once, try to make an effort with your appearance. Wear something nice. Maybe do something with your hair. Claire's friends are all very accomplished, and I'd like you to at least look like you're part of this family." The words stung, but they weren't new. I'd been hearing variations of this my entire adult life. "I'll be there, Mom." "Good. And Nora? Please don't talk about your work too much. No one wants to hear depressing stories at a celebration." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there in my tiny apartment, looking around at the life I'd built. Yes, it was small. Yes, I struggled financially. But I had purpose. I had meaning. Every day, I helped women find their strength, rebuild their lives, escape situations that could have killed them. I'd saved lives. Literally saved them. Why wasn't that enough for my family? The 3 months leading up to Claire's engagement party were consumed with work. I was managing 15 active cases, including a particularly difficult one involving a woman named Sarah who was trying to leave her abusive husband while protecting her 3 children. The case required late nights, emergency calls, court appearances, and more emotional energy than I thought I had. But we won. Sarah got full custody. Her husband was ordered to stay away. She and her kids moved into a safe apartment, started therapy, began healing. The day we finalized everything, Sarah hugged me with tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You and your team saved all of us." That moment, that pure, beautiful moment of triumph, was what my work was about. I thought about telling my family about Sarah's case. About how we'd navigated the legal system, found resources, built a support network that gave a desperate woman a second chance at life. Surely they'd understand then. Surely they'd see the value in what I did. But I remembered my mother's words, "No one wants to hear depressing stories at a celebration." So I kept it to myself. The week before Claire's engagement party, I received an unexpected invitation to speak at a national conference on trauma recovery. It was a huge honor. The conference was attended by social workers, psychologists, and policymakers from across the country. The organizers had read my published research on long-term outcomes for domestic violence survivors and wanted me to present my findings. I was thrilled. Terrified. And immediately, I thought about telling my family. Maybe this would be the thing that made them proud. Maybe speaking at a national conference would prove that my work mattered, that I mattered. I called my mother to share the news. "That's nice, dear," she said absently. I could hear her typing in the background, probably responding to emails. "When is it?" "Next month. It's in Chicago." "I'll be presenting my research on Chicago?" "Well, that's far." "Will it pay for your travel?" "Yes, they're covering everything." "Mom, this is a really big deal. There will be people there from major universities, government agencies." "Well, good for you. Listen, I need to talk to you about the engagement party. Claire wants everyone in cocktail attire. Do you have something appropriate to wear, or do I need to buy you a dress?" The question felt like a slap. I was 31 years old with a master's degree, and my mother was asking if she needed to buy me clothes like I was a child. "I have a dress, Mom." "Are you sure? Because I remember the last family event, you wore that awful brown thing that made you look washed out." "I have a dress," I repeated, my jaw tight. "Fine. And Nora?" "Claire mentioned that most of her friends are bringing their significant others. Are you seeing anyone?" Here we go, I thought. Actually, yes. I've been seeing someone for a few weeks. His name is James. This was technically true. I had been on 3 dates with James, a fellow social worker I'd met at a training workshop. We'd connected over our shared passion for advocacy work, had long conversations about systemic change and trauma-informed care. It was new, tentative, but promising. "James what? What does he do? Where did you meet him?" "He's a social worker. We met at a professional conference." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "Another social worker," my mother finally said, her disappointment palpable. "So neither of you makes any money?" "We make enough," I said quietly. "Does this James have family money at least?" "Goodbye, Mom. I'll see you at the party." I hung up before she could say anything else that would make me cry. The truth was, I'd been questioning my relationship with James even before that phone call. We got along well. We shared values. But there was something missing, a spark, a depth of connection I couldn't quite articulate. We were good colleagues who enjoyed each other's company, but I wasn't sure we were meant to be more than that. Still, the thought of showing up to Claire's engagement party alone, facing the inevitable questions and pitying looks, made my stomach turn. So when James mentioned he'd be out of town for a family obligation the weekend of the party, I felt simultaneous relief and dread. Relief because I wouldn't have to subject him to my family's judgment. Dread because I'd be alone, again, while Claire showed off her successful fiancé to a crowd of equally successful friends. The day of the engagement party arrived with typical South Carolina humidity. I'd driven down from Boston the day before, staying in a budget hotel rather than with my parents. My mother had been hurt by this. "We have plenty of room, Nora, but I needed space." Distance. A place to retreat when the inevitable criticism became too much. I'd chosen my dress carefully. A simple navy sheath, elegant but not flashy. I'd had my hair professionally styled, a rare indulgence. I'd even splurged on new shoes. I wanted to look put together, successful, worthy of being Claire's sister. As I drove up to my parents' estate, because it really was an estate, not just a house, I felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. The circular driveway was already crowded with expensive cars. A valet service had been hired. String lights had been strung through the massive oak trees. A jazz band played somewhere in the distance. Claire had always dreamed of an extravagant wedding, and apparently the engagement party was just the beginning. I handed my keys to the valet, a college-aged kid who barely glanced at my 10-year-old Honda Civic before giving me a ticket. As I walked toward the backyard, I could hear the buzz of conversation, the clink of champagne glasses, the forced laughter that accompanied these kinds of events. My father spotted me first. "Nora," he said, his voice professionally pleasant. He was in lawyer mode, the tone he used with clients and colleagues. "You made it. Your mother was worried you'd cancel at the last minute." "I wouldn't miss Claire's party, Dad." "Of course not." He looked me up and down, his expression neutral. "You look nice." "Different." "Did you do something to your hair?" "Just styled it." "Well. It looks fine." He glanced around. "Where's this boyfriend your mother mentioned?" "James, was it?" "He couldn't make it. Family obligation." My father's expression shifted, a micro-expression of disappointment that he quickly masked. "I see. That's unfortunate. Claire's fiancé Marcus is here, of course. Yale Medical School, top of his class, already being recruited by the best hospitals in the country. Your mother and I are very impressed." The unspoken comparison hung in the air. Claire's fiancé is impressive. Yours couldn't even bother to show up. "I'm happy for Claire," I said carefully. "Of course you are." My father patted my shoulder awkwardly. "Go find your mother. She's around here somewhere, orchestrating everything." I found my mother holding court near the bar, surrounded by well-dressed women who were probably Claire's future in-laws and family friends. When she saw me, her eyes widened slightly. "Nora, you came." She kissed both my cheeks, continental style, a habit she'd picked up after a trip to France decades ago. "Let me look at you." "Oh, that dress is much better than usual. You almost look elegant." "Almost." The qualifier stung. "Thanks, Mom. Everything looks beautiful." "Doesn't it?" Claire had very specific ideas, and of course your father and I spared no expense. This is her day. Well, and Marcus's, but really it's all about Claire. She looked around. "Where's James?" "He couldn't make it." My mother's smile tightened. "How convenient. Did he ever exist, or was he just another one of your stories?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "Oh, Nora, don't be so sensitive. It's just that you have a habit of embellishing. Remember when you told everyone you were being considered for that big promotion? And then it turned out you'd just been asked to take on extra work with no additional pay? That's not what happened. The point is, if this James person can't be bothered to attend a simple party, one has to wonder if he's real or just another fantasy you've concocted to make yourself feel better about your choices." I opened my mouth to respond, but my mother had already turned away, beckoning to someone across the yard. "Patricia. Come meet my daughter Nora." For the next hour, I was paraded around like a curiosity. My mother introduced me to various family friends and distant relatives, always with the same script: "This is my daughter Nora. She's a social worker in Boston. Very dedicated to her work." The pause before dedicated said everything. The pitying smiles people gave me said even more. "A social worker," one woman said, her tone suggesting I'd announced I was a professional rat catcher. "How noble. That must be very rewarding." Another woman, dripping in diamonds, touched my arm sympathetically. My daughter went through a phase like that. Wanted to save the world. But she eventually grew out of it and went to business school. There's still time for you, dear. I smiled. Nodded. Made small talk. Died a little inside with each interaction. Claire found me eventually, looking radiant in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her engagement ring, an enormous diamond that caught the light with every movement, seemed designed to blind anyone who looked at it too long. Nora. She hugged me, and for a moment, I caught a glimpse of the sister I'd grown up with before she'd become this polished, perfect version of herself. You look great. I love your dress. Thanks. Congratulations, Claire. I'm really happy for you. Thank you. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Mom said your boyfriend didn't come? He had a family thing. Claire's expression was sympathetic, but I caught something else underneath. Relief, maybe. Relief that she didn't have to share the spotlight with my plus one, that she could remain the center of attention. That's too bad, she said, not sounding like it was too bad at all. Marcus is around here somewhere. You'll love him. He's amazing. She drifted away to greet other guests, leaving me standing alone near the bar. I ordered a glass of wine, something expensive I definitely couldn't afford to buy myself, and tried to make myself invisible. It didn't work. Nora, dear, come here. My mother's voice cut through the ambient noise. I turned to see her standing with a group of what looked like Claire's friends and their significant others. All of them were impeccably dressed, radiating success and confidence. I reluctantly joined them. Everyone, this is my older daughter, Nora. Nora, these are some of Claire's college friends. They all work together at the consulting firm. A blonde woman extended her hand. Catherine. I work with Claire in strategy. She talks about you sometimes. Does she? I was genuinely surprised. Oh yes. She mentioned you're a social worker? That must be interesting. The way she said interesting made it clear she meant tragic. It is. I work with domestic violence survivors, helping them rebuild their lives. How depressing, another woman chimed in. I couldn't do work like that. Too much sadness. I'd need to be on antidepressants just to cope. The group laughed, and I forced a smile. It can be challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding. When you help someone escape an abusive situation, when you watch them rediscover their strength, but the pay must be awful, a man interrupted. He had his arm around Catherine and was looking at me with the kind of pity people reserve for the terminally ill. What do social workers even make? 30,000 a year? Something like that, I said quietly, not mentioning that my actual salary was closer to 45,000, which still wasn't much compared to what these people probably earned. God, I couldn't survive on that, Catherine said. My apartment alone costs more than that annually. The conversation moved on, leaving me standing there feeling small and insignificant. These were Claire's people. This was Claire's world. A world where success was measured in salary and square footage, where helping others was admirable in theory but foolish in practice. I excused myself and wandered to the edge of the property, where the manicured lawn gave way to a view of the salt marsh. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. It was beautiful, peaceful, and utterly at odds with the social performance happening behind me. Hiding? I turned to find Claire standing beside me, 2 champagne flutes in hand. She offered me one. Just getting some air, I said. Liar. You're hiding. I don't blame you. She sipped her champagne. My friends can be intense. They're successful. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with what you do, Nora. Claire looked at me, and for a moment, I saw genuine feeling in her eyes. I know Mom and Dad don't get it. I know they think you're wasting your potential. But I think what you do is brave. I could never do it. The admission surprised me. Claire and I had been rivals more than sisters for so long that hearing her say something kind felt surreal. "Thank you," I managed. "But Nora." Claire hesitated. "Why do you keep choosing the hard path? You're brilliant. You could do anything. Make real money, have a comfortable life. Why do you keep choosing struggle?" It was the same question my family had been asking for years. And I still didn't have an answer that would satisfy them. "Because someone has to," I finally said. "Because the women I work with deserve someone who cares, who fights for them, who doesn't give up just because it's hard. Because making a difference matters more to me than making money." Claire was quiet for a moment. "I wish I could be that idealistic." "It's not idealism. It's just values. Different values. Maybe." She finished her champagne. "Come on. Marcus wants to meet you." We walked back to the party, and Claire introduced me to her fiancé. Marcus was exactly what I expected: tall, handsome, confident to the point of arrogance. He shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who'd been taught that handshakes matter. "Claire's sister," he said, smiling. "I've heard a lot about you. All good things, I hope." "Of course." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Claire says you're a social worker." "That's admirable. Very selfless." There it was again. That word. Selfless. As if choosing to help others meant I was sacrificing something valuable, denying myself the good life in favor of martyrdom. "I enjoy my work," I said simply. "I'm sure you do." Marcus glanced at Claire. "Darling, your mother is trying to get your attention." They drifted away, and I was alone again. I checked my phone. 6:30. The party had started at 5. How long was I required to stay before I could escape without offending anyone? Nora Thompson? I turned to find a woman approaching, someone I didn't recognize. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with kind eyes and an elegant demeanor that seemed genuine rather than performed. "Yes? I'm Margaret Richardson. Your mother introduced us earlier, though I suspect you've met so many people tonight that you don't remember." I vaguely recalled the introduction. "Mrs. Richardson, of course." "I'm sorry, don't apologize. These events are overwhelming." She smiled. "I wanted to talk to you because your mother mentioned you work with domestic violence survivors. My foundation has been looking for someone to consult on a new program we're developing. Would you be interested in hearing more?" For the first time all evening, I felt a spark of genuine interest. "Your foundation?" "The Richardson Foundation for Women's Empowerment. We fund initiatives that support women in crisis, housing, legal aid, counseling services. We're expanding our reach and need someone with your expertise to help us develop best practices." This was real. This was important. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I dreamed about. "I'd be very interested," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "Excellent. Here's my card. Call my assistant next week, and we'll set up a proper meeting." She handed me an elegant business card with embossed lettering. "Your work is important, Nora. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The validation from a complete stranger meant more than she could possibly know. "Thank you." As Mrs. Richardson walked away, I felt a shift inside me. Maybe I didn't need my family's approval. Maybe it was enough to know that my work mattered to the people it helped, to organizations like the Richardson Foundation, to the broader community of advocates and survivors. But then my mother's voice cut through the ambient noise, loud enough to carry across the terrace. "So where is this mystery fiancé of yours, Nora? Or did you make him up?" The conversations around us died down as heads turned. My mother was standing near the bar with my Aunt Patricia and a cluster of other women, all of them looking at me expectantly. My stomach dropped. "I never said I was engaged, Mom. I said I was seeing someone." "Oh, that's not what you told your father. He distinctly remembers you saying you were bringing your fiancé." My mother's smile was sharp, dangerous. Unless I'm mistaken? I wasn't sure what game she was playing, but I knew it wasn't going to end well for me. There's no fiancé. Just a boyfriend who couldn't make it tonight. A boyfriend who couldn't be bothered to attend his girlfriend's sister's engagement party? My Aunt Patricia chimed in, her voice dripping with skepticism. How convenient. He had a family obligation, of course he did. My mother laughed, that high, brittle sound that made my skin crawl. Nora, sweetheart, it's okay to admit you're alone. You don't need to invent relationships to make yourself feel better. The humiliation was complete. Everyone was staring. Claire had stopped mid-conversation, her face flushed with second-hand embarrassment. My father was shaking his head, disappointed as always. I'm not inventing anything, I said, my voice barely audible. Then where is he? My mother pressed. What's his name? What does he do? Where did you meet? Surely you can give us some details about this phantom boyfriend. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Because what could I say? That James and I had been on 3 dates? That I wasn't even sure we were really dating? That I'd mentioned him to avoid showing up alone but hadn't actually expected to be interrogated about our relationship status? His name is James, I finally managed. He's a social worker. We met at a conference. He's real, and then call him, Claire's friend Catherine suggested, a cruel smile playing at her lips. FaceTime him. Prove he exists. The crowd murmured agreement. This had become entertainment for them, a spectacle to break up the monotony of polite small talk and champagne. My phone felt heavy in my clutch. I could call James. I could try to explain the situation, ask him to back up my story. But he was hours away, at his own family event, and what would I even say? Hi, my family thinks I made you up. Can you tell them you're real? It was absurd. Humiliating. And entirely my fault for mentioning him in the first place. I don't need to prove anything to you, I said, but my voice cracked, betraying the tears I was holding back. Because he doesn't exist, my mother concluded triumphantly. Oh, Nora. This is just sad. You spent your whole life pretending to be something you're not. Pretending your work matters, pretending you're happy, pretending you have relationships. When are you going to face reality? The words hit like physical blows. Each one landed precisely where it would hurt most. And the crowd, these strangers and distant relatives and my sister's successful friends, they were eating it up. Some looked uncomfortable, but most seemed entertained by my public dismantling. I needed to leave. Now. Before I completely fell apart in front of everyone. Excuse me, I whispered, turning toward the house. Nora, wait, Claire called after me, but I was already moving, nearly running, desperate to escape. I made it to the bathroom off the main hallway before the tears came. I locked the door and sank onto the closed toilet lid, sobbing quietly so no one would hear. My carefully applied makeup ran down my face. My professionally styled hair felt ridiculous now, like I'd been playing dress-up, pretending to be someone worthy of this family. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey, it's James. Just got a weird call from a number in Charleston asking if I was your fiancé? What's going on? My stomach turned to ice. Someone from the party had actually called him. Someone had tracked down his number, probably through social media or professional networks, and interrogated him about our relationship status. I typed back with shaking hands, I'm so sorry. My family is complicated. Long story. I'll explain later. His response was immediate, your family sounds like a nightmare. Are you okay? Was I okay? No. I was about as far from okay as a person could be. Before I could respond, another text came through. This one from my mother, Nora, you're being dramatic. Come back outside. I turned off my phone. I don't know how long I stayed in that bathroom. Long enough for my tears to dry. Long enough for my breathing to steady. Long enough to realize that I couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep showing up to family events, hoping for validation that would never come, subjecting myself to humiliation for the sake of maintaining relationships that brought me nothing but pain. When I finally emerged, I could hear the party continuing outside. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses. Life moving on as if my small breakdown hadn't even registered. I found my purse, grabbed my valet ticket, and headed for the exit. My mother intercepted me in the foyer. "Nora, where are you going? You can't just leave. Watch me. You're being childish. I was just teasing you. Everyone was having fun with it." Fun. I turned to face her, and something in my expression made her step back. "You think publicly humiliating me is fun? Oh, don't be so sensitive. If you weren't so secretive about your life, we wouldn't have to question everything you tell us. Maybe I'm secretive because every time I share something, you use it against me. Every accomplishment gets minimized. Every choice gets criticized. Every relationship gets dissected and dismissed. That's not fair, isn't it? Name one time, Mom. One single time you've been proud of me. One time you've celebrated my accomplishments without comparing them to Claire's or pointing out how I could have done better." My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I turned back toward the door. "Nora, please. Don't leave like this. People will talk. Let them talk. I'm done caring what people think. I'm done trying to be the daughter you wanted instead of the daughter I am." I walked out of my parents' house and didn't look back. The drive back to my hotel was a blur of tears and anger and something that felt dangerously close to relief. I'd finally said what I'd been thinking for years. I'd finally stood up to my mother. I'd finally drawn a line. It should have felt good. Empowering. Instead, it just felt lonely. Back in my hotel room, I turned on my phone to find 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Most were from my mother, ranging from angry to apologetic to angry again. A few were from Claire, expressing concern. One was from my father, simply stating, "You embarrassed your mother. You owe her an apology." I owed her an apology. Not the other way around. Never the other way around. I was about to turn off my phone again when it rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Nora Thompson?" "Yes?" "This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We received your research proposal last month, and I'm calling to let you know it's been accepted. We'd like to fund your project with a $50,000 grant." I nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your proposal for a comprehensive study on long-term outcomes for domestic violence survivors. It's exactly the kind of research we need. The grant will cover your research costs, participant compensation, and allow you to take a sabbatical from your current position to focus on the project full-time." This was huge. This was career-defining. This was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. "I don't know what to say," I managed. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You earned it, Nora. Your work has been on our radar for a while now. We're excited to support this project. I'll be sending you the official paperwork tomorrow. Congratulations." After we hung up, I sat on the hotel bed in stunned silence. $50,000. A fully funded research project. Recognition from one of the most respected organizations in my field. I wanted to call someone. Share the news. Celebrate. But who would I call? My family, who thought my work was depressing and pointless. James, who I'd barely been dating and had now been dragged into my family drama. My colleagues, who were probably asleep since it was past midnight. I settled for opening a small bottle of wine from the hotel minibar and toasting myself in the mirror. To Nora Thompson, I said to my reflection. Who doesn't need her family's approval to be successful? The words sounded confident. Strong. But inside, I felt hollow. The next morning, I woke to more messages from my family. My mother wanted me to come back to the house to talk. Claire wanted to make sure I was okay. My father wanted me to apologize. I ignored all of them and drove back to Boston. The 10-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think. About my family. About my choices. About what I wanted my life to look like going forward. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd made a decision. I was done seeking my family's approval. Done hoping they'd eventually understand my work. Done subjecting myself to their judgment and criticism. I would focus on my career, on my research, on making a real difference in the lives of the women I served. That would be enough. It had to be enough. The weeks following Claire's engagement party were some of the most productive of my life. I threw myself into my work with renewed intensity. I started planning the research project that would be funded by the NCAD grant. I met with Margaret Richardson about consulting for her foundation. I scheduled the presentation at the national conference. And I didn't speak to my family. They tried to reach me. My mother called daily for the first week, alternating between anger and guilt-tripping. Claire sent long, apologetic texts. My father left one voicemail, "You're being stubborn and immature. Call your mother back." I deleted their messages without responding. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more dreading phone calls. No more anxiety about family gatherings. No more comparing myself to Claire and coming up short. I was just Nora, doing the work she loved, making a difference in the world. It was lonely. But it was peaceful. Then, 6 weeks after the disastrous engagement party, something unexpected happened. I met Julian. I wasn't looking for a relationship. After the James situation, I decided to focus exclusively on work. Romance could wait. Maybe forever. But Julian wasn't someone you could plan for. He was the kind of person who just happened to you, like a storm or a miracle. We met at a fundraiser for a women's shelter. I'd been invited to speak about my research, and Julian was there representing his family's foundation. I didn't know who he was at first. He introduced himself simply as Julian, no last name, no credentials. He was tall, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that seemed to see straight through all the defenses I'd carefully constructed. We talked for 3 hours after the event ended. About trauma recovery, about the failures of the social services system, about the intersection of wealth and responsibility. He was brilliant, compassionate, and genuinely interested in the work I did. Most people glaze over when I start talking about attachment theory and trauma-informed care, I said as we walked through the city streets, neither of us ready for the evening to end. Most people are idiots, Julian replied with a grin. Your work is fascinating. You're literally helping people rebuild their entire sense of self after it's been destroyed. That's not just social work, that's alchemy. I laughed. That's a generous interpretation. It's an accurate interpretation. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Nora, can I be honest with you? Please. I came to this fundraiser because my assistant insisted. I wasn't particularly interested in being there. I planned to make a donation, shake some hands, and leave. But then you started speaking, and I couldn't look away. You have this way of talking about trauma that makes it feel real and human, not clinical. You made me care about people I've never met. That's a gift. His words hit me somewhere deep, in a place that had been aching for recognition for so long. Thank you, I whispered. Can I take you to dinner? Tomorrow night? I want to hear more about your research project. I should have said no. I should have maintained my focus on work, avoided the complication of a relationship. But there was something about Julian that made me want to say yes. Okay, I agreed. Tomorrow night. That dinner turned into another, then another. Within a week, we were spending every free moment together. Julian was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. He was successful, though he was vague about exactly what he did, but success hadn't made him arrogant or disconnected. He volunteered at a youth center. He funded scholarships for low-income students. He used his resources to make a difference. We connected on every level. Intellectually, emotionally, physically. He made me laugh. He challenged my thinking. He listened when I talked about my work, asked questions, remembered details. He also respected my boundaries. When I mentioned that my family situation was complicated and I wasn't ready to talk about it, he simply said, "Whenever you're ready." No pressure. 3 weeks into our relationship, lying in his apartment, which was significantly nicer than mine, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, I finally told him about my family. About being the disappointment. About Claire's engagement party. About the public humiliation and the aftermath. Julian listened without interrupting, his arm around me, his fingers gently stroking my hair. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Nora," he finally said, "your family sounds toxic. They're just traditional. They have certain expectations." "They're toxic," he repeated firmly. "Loving parents don't publicly humiliate their children. Supportive families don't mock your career choices. What they did to you at that party was abusive." The word hung in the air. Abusive. It was the word I used in my professional life, the word I applied to the situations my clients escaped from. I'd never applied it to my own family. "I don't know if I'd call it abuse," I said carefully. "What would you call it? Emotional manipulation? Systematic devaluation? Creating an environment where you feel worthless unless you conform to their standards?" He turned to look at me. "If one of your clients told you this story about their family, what would you tell them?" I thought about that. If a client came to me describing a family that constantly criticized her choices, publicly humiliated her, made her feel inadequate and unworthy, I would absolutely identify that as emotional abuse. "I'd tell them they deserve better," I whispered. "Exactly. And so do you." We lay there in silence, and I felt something shift inside me. Permission, maybe. Permission to acknowledge that my family's treatment of me wasn't just disappointing or hurtful, it was wrong. "Are you still in contact with them?" Julian asked. "No. I haven't spoken to any of them since the party." "Good. You need space to heal." He kissed my forehead. "For what it's worth, I think what you do is extraordinary. You're one of the most impressive people I've ever met." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But another part, the part that had spent 31 years absorbing my family's messages about my inadequacy, struggled to accept the praise as genuine. "You don't have to say that," I murmured. "I'm not just saying it. I mean it." Julian sat up, pulling me with him so we were facing each other. "Nora, I'm falling in love with you. And I need you to understand that it's not despite your career or your choices, it's because of them. You're exactly who you should be." Tears pricked my eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too." He kissed me then, deep and tender and full of promise. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt seen. Truly seen. Not as the disappointing daughter or the struggling social worker or the pathetic woman who'd made up a boyfriend. Just as Nora. Myself. Enough. Over the next month, my relationship with Julian deepened. He met my friends, my real friends, the colleagues who understood my work and supported my choices. They loved him. He was charming, intelligent, and clearly crazy about me. "Where did you find this man?" my friend Rachel asked after dinner with her and her husband. "And does he have a brother?" "He's pretty great," I admitted, smiling. "Pretty great?" "Nora, he looks at you like you hung the moon. And did you notice how he talked about your research? He knows more about your work than most of our colleagues." It was true. Julian had read all my published papers, attended one of my presentations, even volunteered to help with data analysis for my upcoming research project. "He's very supportive," I said. "He's perfect," Rachel corrected. "Don't screw this up." I didn't plan to. For the first time in my life, I was in a relationship that felt healthy and balanced. Julian didn't try to change me or minimize my work. He celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges. When I had a particularly difficult case that left me emotionally drained, he'd show up with my favorite takeout and let me cry on his shoulder. When I got accepted to present at another conference, he bought champagne and insisted on celebrating. "You do know you're amazing, right?" he'd say regularly. And slowly, incredibly, I started to believe him. My only source of tension was my family. They were still trying to contact me. My mother's messages had shifted from angry to worried to manipulative. "Nora, I don't understand why you're punishing us like this. We love you. We've always loved you. Please call me back." Claire's texts were more frequent. "Nora, Mom is really upset. I know what happened at my party was bad, but don't you think you're overreacting? Can we talk?" Even my father, who rarely showed emotion, left a voicemail that surprised me. "Nora, this silence is childish. Your mother made a mistake, but you're taking it too far. Family is supposed to forgive each other. Call us back." I didn't respond to any of them. "Do you think I'm being unreasonable?" I asked Julian one evening. We were cooking dinner together in his kitchen, a domestic routine that had become our favorite way to spend time together. "About your family?" "Yeah. Everyone keeps saying family is supposed to forgive each other, that I should give them another chance." Julian was quiet while he chopped vegetables. "Do you want to give them another chance?" "I don't know. Part of me misses them. They're my family. But another part of me feels so much lighter without them in my life. I don't miss the anxiety, the constant criticism, the feeling of never being good enough." "Then there's your answer." He set down the knife and turned to me. "Nora, forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you choose to give when and if it feels right. Your family hurt you repeatedly. They made you feel worthless. Just because they're related to you doesn't mean you have to let them keep hurting you." "But what if I regret it? What if I look back and realize I threw away my family over pride?" "This isn't about pride. This is about self-preservation. And if they want a relationship with you, they need to earn it. They need to acknowledge what they did wrong, apologize sincerely, and demonstrate that they're willing to change. Until then, you don't owe them anything." His words made sense. But the guilt remained, a constant low-level hum in the background of my happiness. Then, 3 months after Claire's engagement party, something happened that changed everything. My mother called from a different number, one I didn't recognize, so I answered. "Nora? Oh, thank God. You finally answered." I almost hung up. But something in her voice stopped me. She sounded different. Scared, maybe. "Mom? What's wrong?" "It's your father. He had a heart attack. He's in the hospital." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "They think so. But Nora, we need you here. Please. I know we haven't spoken, I know you're angry, but he's asking for you." I closed my eyes. Of course he was. Of course this was how I'd be pulled back in. "What hospital?" She gave me the details, and I promised I'd be there as soon as I could. When I hung up, Julian was standing in the doorway, concern written across his face. "Your dad? Heart attack. I need to go to Charleston." "I'll come with you." I started to protest. This was family business, messy and complicated, but then I realized I wanted him there. I needed him there. "Okay," I said. "Thank you." We drove through the night, arriving at the Charleston hospital early the next morning. My mother was in the waiting room, looking older than I'd ever seen her. Claire was there too, her eyes red from crying. When my mother saw me, she stood up and rushed over, pulling me into a hug. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you." I awkwardly returned the embrace, unsure how to navigate this moment. "How is he?" "Stable. They did an emergency procedure to clear a blockage. The doctor says he'll recover, but he needs to make lifestyle changes. Less stress, better diet, more exercise. My mother's voice cracked. I was so scared, Nora. I thought I was going to lose him. Claire stood and hugged me too. I'm glad you're here. Of course I'm here. He's my father. We sat together in that waiting room, the three of us, suspended in the strange timelessness that hospitals create. Julian had stayed back, giving us space, but knowing he was nearby gave me strength. After an hour, a doctor came out and told us we could see my father. He was in ICU, hooked up to monitors, looking frail and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. His eyes found mine as I entered the room. Nora. You came. Of course I came, Dad. I'm sorry. His voice was weak, strained. I'm sorry for everything. The party. The things we said. The way we've treated you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Dad, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I thought I had more time. But lying here, thinking I might die, I realized I couldn't leave things the way they were. He reached for my hand. I'm proud of you, Nora. I should have said it years ago. You're doing important work. You're making a real difference. And I'm sorry I made you feel like that wasn't enough. The words I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. And now, in a hospital room, with my father recovering from a near-death experience, I finally got them. Thank you, Dad. Your mother and we pushed you to be like Claire because that's what we understood. But you were never meant to be Claire. You were meant to be you. And you are extraordinary exactly as you are. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down my face as I squeezed his hand. I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. My mother appeared in the doorway, mascara streaked and exhausted. Can I come in? I nodded, and she joined us, taking my father's other hand. Nora, I owe you an apology too, she said quietly. What I did at Claire's party was cruel. I was trying to be funny, trying to entertain our guests, and I used you as the joke. That was wrong. You're my daughter, and I should have been protecting you, not humiliating you. Thank you for saying that, Mom. I want to do better. I want to be better. If you'll give me a chance. Looking at my parents, humbled by illness and fear, I realized something important. They were flawed. They'd hurt me. But they were also human. Capable of growth. Capable of change. We can try, I said carefully. But things need to be different. You need to respect my choices, my career, my life. Even if it's not what you would have chosen for me. We will, my father said firmly. I promise. Claire appeared in the doorway then. Nora? There's someone here to see you. Confused, I stepped into the hallway to find Julian waiting. My mother followed me out. Who's this? She asked. Mom, this is Julian. We're together. Together? My mother looked between us, her expression unreadable. Julian extended his hand. Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry about your husband. Nora wanted to be here as quickly as possible. Thank you for bringing her. My mother shook his hand, studying him with the same scrutiny she'd given all my past relationships. What do you do, Julian? Here we go, I thought. The interrogation. The judgment. I run a family foundation focused on education and social services, Julian said smoothly. Actually, that's how Nora and I met. We're passionate about the same causes. My mother's eyebrows rose. A foundation? That's impressive. Not really. I was fortunate to be born into a family with resources. Nora's the impressive one. The work she does, the lives she changes, that takes real courage and dedication. I saw my mother's expression shift, softening. You think highly of my daughter. I do. I think the world of her. Julian smiled at me, and I felt my heart squeeze. She's extraordinary. My mother was quiet for a moment, then turned to me. Can we talk? Privately? We walked to a small consultation room while Julian waited outside. My mother closed the door and turned to face me. Nora, I need to say something, and I need you to really hear me. Okay. I have spent the last 3 months thinking about what happened at Claire's party. About what I said, how I treated you, why I did it. She took a shaky breath. And I realized something painful. I was jealous of you. I blinked. What? Jealous. Because you had the courage to choose your own path. I never did that. I married your father because it was expected. I became a society wife because that's what women of my generation did. I've spent my whole life living according to other people's expectations. And when I see you, refusing to do that, insisting on following your passion even when it's hard, it forces me to confront my own cowardice. I'd never heard my mother talk like this. So honest. So vulnerable. So I lashed out, she continued. I belittled your choices because acknowledging their validity would mean acknowledging my own regrets. I tried to make you feel small because it made me feel bigger. Tears were streaming down her face now. That's not what a mother should do. And I'm so sorry. I moved forward and hugged her, something I couldn't remember doing in years. She clung to me, sobbing. I'm sorry too, I said. I should have tried to talk to you instead of cutting you off completely. No. My mother pulled back, wiping her eyes. You set a boundary. That was healthy. I just wish I hadn't needed a health crisis to realize how badly I'd failed you. We talked for another hour, really talked, in a way we never had before. About her life, my life, our different choices. About regret and resentment and the complicated dynamics of mothers and daughters. About how we could move forward. When we finally emerged from the consultation room, Julian was chatting easily with Claire, who was smiling more genuinely than I'd seen in months. Your boyfriend is really nice, Claire said when she saw me. And he's been telling me about your research project. Nora, why didn't you tell me you got a $50,000 grant? You didn't ask, I said, but without bitterness. I should have asked. I should have been interested. Claire looked genuinely regretful. I've been a terrible sister. Too focused on my own life, my own success. I never stopped to think about what you needed or wanted. You weren't the only one, I said. We've all made mistakes. My father was released from the hospital 3 days later with a strict care plan and follow-up appointments. I stayed in Charleston for a week, helping my mother get everything organized, spending time with my family, slowly rebuilding the bridges I'd burned. Julian stayed too, fitting seamlessly into my family in a way no one I'd dated ever had. He helped my father with paperwork, made my mother laugh with stories from his foundation work, had long conversations with Claire about corporate law and social responsibility. And he never made me feel like I owed him anything for being there. He just was there, steady and supportive. On our last night before driving back to Boston, my family invited us for dinner. Not a big event, just the 5 of us, eating takeout around my parents' kitchen table. Julian, my father said as we were finishing our meal, I want to thank you for taking care of our daughter during this difficult time. Sir, I'm not taking care of Nora. She's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. I'm just lucky enough to be her partner. My mother smiled. You're good for her. We can see that. She's good for me too, Julian replied, taking my hand under the table. After dinner, as Julian and I were preparing to leave, Claire pulled me aside. Can I ask you something? Of course. At my engagement party, when Mom was saying those things about you making up a boyfriend, why didn't you defend yourself more? Why didn't you tell us about Julian? Because Julian and I didn't know each other yet. We met after the party. Claire's eyes widened. So there really was no boyfriend? Mom was right? There was someone I'd been on a few dates with. But no, not a serious relationship. I was trying to avoid showing up alone and being pitted. I shrugged. It backfired spectacularly. God, Nora. I'm so sorry. We were so cruel to you. You were. But we're moving past it. Still. Claire hesitated. My wedding is in 3 months. I know it might be too soon, but I really want you there. You and Julian. As my sister, not as the family disappointment. Will you come? I thought about it. 3 months ago, I would have said no. Would have protected myself from more potential humiliation. But things had changed. My family had changed. Or maybe we were all finally being honest about who we really were. I'll be there, I said. We'll be there. Claire hugged me tight. Thank you. And Nora? You never have to prove anything to us again. We finally see you. Really see you. 3 months later, I stood in a field in upstate New York, watching my sister marry the man she loved. The wedding was beautiful. Claire had always had excellent taste, but more importantly, it was joyful. Real. Full of genuine happiness rather than performative perfection. And I was part of it. Not as the disappointing older sister, but as family. Equal. Valued. Julian was beside me, looking unfairly handsome in his suit. You okay? He murmured during the ceremony. Better than okay. At the reception, my mother gave a toast that surprised me. She talked about both her daughters, about Claire's ambition and success, but also about my compassion and dedication. I'm proud of both my girls, she said, her voice thick with emotion. They've both chosen different paths, and both paths are valuable. Both matter. Claire is building a career that will change the corporate world. Nora is building a career that changes individual lives. One isn't better than the other, they're both extraordinary. When she sat down, I caught her eye across the room. She smiled at me, genuine and warm, and I smiled back. My father pulled me onto the dance floor later in the evening. His recovery had been remarkable, and his doctors were pleased with his progress. You look happy, he said as we swayed to the music. I am happy. It's Julian, isn't it? He makes you happy. He does. But it's not just Julian. It's finally feeling like I can be myself. Like I don't have to apologize for my choices anymore. You never had to apologize, sweetheart. We were the ones who needed to change, not you. As the night wore on, I found myself standing with Julian near the edge of the reception, watching people dance and laugh and celebrate. Can I tell you something? Julian said quietly. Always. That first night we met, at the fundraiser, I knew you were special. But I didn't realize how special until I met your family. Seeing how they treated you, understanding what you'd overcome, it made me realize that your strength isn't just about your work. It's about who you are at your core. You're the most resilient person I've ever met. I don't feel resilient. I feel like I barely held it together. That's what resilience is. Not never breaking, but finding a way to keep going even when you're broken. He turned to face me fully. Nora, I want to ask you something. My heart started pounding. Okay. I know we've only been together for 6 months. I know it's fast. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Will you marry me? Time seemed to stop. The reception noise faded. All I could see was Julian, this incredible man who saw me and loved me exactly as I was. Yes, I whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the light perfectly. Then he kissed me, deep and tender, while my family and Claire's friends applauded in the background. I love you, he murmured against my lips. I love you too. As we pulled apart, I saw my family approaching. My mother was crying happy tears. My father was beaming. Claire was squealing with excitement. Congratulations, my mother said, hugging us both. Julian, welcome to the family. Officially. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Please, call me Margaret. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations and champagne and happiness. But through it all, I kept thinking about the journey that had brought me here. 3 months ago, I'd stood in my parents' backyard, being publicly humiliated, feeling worthless and alone. I'd driven away that night convinced I'd never find what I was looking for: acceptance, respect, love. But I'd been looking in the wrong place. I'd been seeking validation from people who couldn't give it, trying to force myself into a mold that had never fit. And then I'd stopped. I'd stepped away. I'd chosen myself. And in choosing myself, I'd found everything else. A career I was proud of. A partner who celebrated me. A family who finally saw me. A life that felt authentic and meaningful and wholly mine. 6 months later, Julian and I were married on a beach in Cape Cod. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Nothing extravagant. Nothing performative. Just 2 people who loved each other, making a commitment in front of the people who mattered most. My mother helped me get ready, doing up the buttons on the back of my simple white dress. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "Inside and out." "Thanks, Mom." She turned me around to face her. "Nora, I need to tell you something. Meeting Julian, seeing how he treats you, watching you build this life, it's shown me what I should have been doing all along. Supporting you. Celebrating you. Believing in you. I'm sorry it took me so long. You're doing it now. That's what matters. Still, I have a lot of years to make up for." She smiled through tears. "But I intend to spend the rest of my life making you proud." "You already do, Mom." The ceremony was perfect. My father walked me down the aisle. Claire was my maid of honor. Julian's best friend from college stood up for him. And as we exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever came next, I felt completely at peace. This was what I'd been searching for. Not approval from people who didn't understand me. Not validation from a system that valued the wrong things. But genuine connection. Real love. True acceptance. At the reception, Julian and I danced our first dance to a song we'd chosen together. As he held me close, he whispered, "Happy?" "Impossibly happy." "Good. Because I have another surprise for you." "Julian, the wedding was enough, it's not from me." "Well, not exactly." He nodded toward the edge of the dance floor, where Margaret Richardson, the woman I'd met at Claire's engagement party, was standing with several other people I recognized from various points in my career. When the song ended, Margaret approached us. "Congratulations, Nora. You look radiant." "Mrs. Richardson, thank you for coming. I didn't realize you were on the guest list. Julian invited me. And I'm glad he did, because I have news." She smiled. "The Richardson Foundation has been reviewing your research project. The work you're doing on long-term outcomes for domestic violence survivors is exactly the kind of initiative we want to support. We'd like to fund an expansion of the project and offer you a position as our Director of Research and Programming." I stared at her, speechless. "It's a full-time position with a substantial salary increase," she continued. "You'd be overseeing all our domestic violence prevention and recovery programs, directing research initiatives, and training social workers across the country on trauma-informed care. Basically, you'd be doing exactly what you're already doing, but with more resources and a bigger platform." I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Julian encouraged, grinning. "Yes, I managed." "Yes, absolutely yes." Margaret hugged me. "Wonderful. We'll discuss the details after your honeymoon, but I wanted to share the news today. Congratulations, Nora. You've earned this." As she walked away, I turned to Julian. "Did you know about this?" "I may have put in a good word. But Nora, they chose you because you're the best person for the position. Your work speaks for itself." I kissed him, overwhelmed with gratitude and love and disbelief that this was my life now. The rest of the reception was a celebration not just of our marriage, but of everything that had led us to this moment. My colleagues gave toasts about my dedication to the work. My family gave toasts about how proud they were. Julian's family, warm, welcoming people who'd embraced me immediately, gave toasts about how happy I made their son. And through it all, I kept thinking about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Broken. Humiliated. Convinced she was a failure. If I could talk to her now, I'd tell her what I'd finally learned: your worth isn't determined by other people's approval. Your value isn't measured by your salary or your status or your family's expectations. You are enough exactly as you are, doing exactly what you're meant to do. And the people who can't see that? They're the ones missing out. Not you. That's my story. The story of how I went from being my family's disappointment to living a life I'm genuinely proud of. It didn't happen the way I expected. I didn't change who I was or what I cared about to make my family happy. I didn't compromise my values or my career. I just stopped seeking their approval and started living for myself. And somehow, in doing that, I got everything I'd ever wanted. A career I'm passionate about. A partner who sees me. A family who finally understands me. A life that feels authentic and meaningful. The helicopter moment, that dramatic scene at Claire's engagement party that I started this story with, never actually happened. There was no grand gesture, no cinematic vindication, no moment where my family suddenly realized their mistake because someone impressive validated me. The real story was quieter. More gradual. More real. My family changed because they almost lost my father and realized what mattered. Because they saw me walk away and understood they'd pushed too far. Because they did the hard work of examining their own behavior and choosing to do better. And I changed because I stopped waiting for their approval and started valuing myself. That's the real revenge, if you want to call it that. Not proving them wrong with some dramatic gesture, but building a life so full of purpose and love that their opinion of me became irrelevant. If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you have a family who doesn't understand you, who criticizes your choices, who makes you feel less than, I want you to know something: you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to wait for them to finally see your worth. You already have worth. It's inherent. It's undeniable. And the people who can't see it aren't worth your energy. Choose yourself. Build the life that makes you happy, not the life others expect you to live. Surround yourself with people who celebrate you, not people who tolerate you. And trust that when you do that, everything else will fall into place. It won't be easy. There will be lonely moments. There will be doubt. There will be people telling you you're being selfish or unreasonable or too sensitive. But on the other side of all that is a life that's truly yours. And that's worth everything. My name is Nora Thompson. I'm a social worker, a researcher, a wife, a daughter, a sister. I'm exactly who I'm meant to be. And I've never been happier.